Hello, welcome to a new episode of Anti-Patterns in Angular. Today I wanted to talk to you about something I called event bubbling. So event bubbling is a common behavior of browsers, back in the time of jQuery and stuff. So the idea is that you bubble up the event, whether it's a click event or whatever. And it happens, you can bubble it up or you can bubble it down actually. So it happens in Angular as well. And I consider that a huge anti-pattern, and let me just get to it. So imagine you have a module, I call it anti-pattern, in which we're going to have a smart component, we're going to have a parent presentational component, and the child presentational component. Ignore the middle for a little while. So what we want to do is to achieve sort of something like this. So we want to have two buttons, and then when I click this button, I'm gonna get the alert with the ID of that button. So this button has a B2. This one is disabled, so I cannot click it. But if I clicked it, if it would be a not disabled button, then it would show me B1. So this is B2, B1. So very simple stuff. So how it's normally coded. Let me show it to you. So normally you would have some sort of a smart component, right? And then in this smart component, this is where we have this alert. Obviously, you would not have an alert. You would just, I don't know, call some sort of a service or do any other type of logic. Then in the template of that, you would have something called the parent presentational component, in which you would listen to the button clicked event and then output it back to the smart component. So this handler would get triggered here in this event, and then naturally you would go to the parent component, and then you would also have an event handler just like that from the smart component, and then you would have a child presentational component. So just for the comparison, these are very similar. And then you would still have an event handler. And if you go to the child component, this is the end of the story. You have two buttons here, and then there is a normal native click event, right? So once I click any of these buttons, I trigger the on button clicked in my child presentational component. That gets emit the output through event emitter. So that means a parent component can now listen to it, that event emitter, this output, and then trigger its own, and then exactly the same things happen here, and then go to the smart component. Okay, so first things like this instead of just having this in the smart component. I mean, life is not always as easy as it seems. Right now you can see a presentational component here, like the parent presentation that, it's a very basic piece of template, but you can imagine it would not be like that, right? Because let's say this parent component would have its own template, and these buttons are just like small piece of it. So obviously this is super simplified, but I'm pretty sure if you build any sort of a medium or even a small application, you probably had to have a problem like that. So this is not gonna scale. This is not gonna work pretty nice in a long term. Why? Because you will get changes from the business. The business will come and say, or your client will come and say, hey, I would like to move that somewhere else. Now, you see, this is gonna have a very bad influence on you. Why? Because you're gonna have a shotgun surgery problem like the one I described before. So even bubbling is a bad thing. It's because it increases maintainability of your software, of your application. Because imagine this is only one presentational component, but you could easily have another types of components like this, like maybe a drop down, so maybe it's a form or whatever. So what's gonna happen is your parent presentational components its own responsibility will be to handle all those outputs from all those different pieces of template. So whenever you want to move a piece of template from HTML file to maybe another component, you will have to pretty much like remove those outputs as well, right? So that's not clean, because ideally we want to have an encapsulation of my components so I can move them without affecting anything else. So this is the first problem, that we create a lot of boilerplate code that's not needed. Because imagine, I don't know, let's just say I would like to add maybe key down feature, right? So okay, right, this is a button, but maybe I want to have a mouse over, or maybe I want to have mouse down, or maybe I want to have a key up, or whatever, maybe I want to select it and then move it around or whatever. That doesn't matter. The point is, the more times I actually start handling other types of events here, and there are plenty of those, right? So I just put the M and look how many of them come up, right? You have like animations, you have whatever, you have tons of those events, like really a lot of them. So for each one of them, each time the business comes to you, and they will come to you eventually and ask for more, you will have more and more unmaintainable code, because whenever you add a new event handler here, you will also have to add it here. So you can imagine the consequence of this. This is button click, button mouse down, button whatever, button whatever, button whatever, button whatever, button whatever. And this is only one type of event. One type of the component inside. And then then you start adding, I don't know, any other type of components. Doesn't matter. Some child or another child sort of thing, and that also will have button clicked, right? Let's just say so. So you see that and maybe more than just button clicks, maybe exactly the same amount of sort of triggers. So now you multiply that by 2. And then you look at this component. I mean, it's getting pretty big. And what's its identity? I mean, yeah, it's a piece of template. That's it. I mean, its own reason to exist is to bubble those events up, right? I mean, yeah, sure, it has a template and stuff, but that's not a good enough reason. So this is bad. You will get a lot of problems in your code base if you do the event bubbling. So this is one of the story when you want to bubble it up, but then you see the selected part, right? So you're gonna have a lot of other things going in. So for now, we want to say from my smart component that I want to select B1. That's also a sort of a problem, because first of all, I need to push it down the tree and then open that one here, and then I have to have an input for the selected string as well. And then obviously I have a very simple logic to say if this ID is the one that is selected. But generally, you see, I'm again adding an extra layer of stuff. I mean, I'm adding the input and here, which is normal, and then, but in the pirate component, why do I need that input, right? So pretty much this is just like a couple of, runways of your code that now you need to, hopefully you get it tested. But it's silly, right? I mean, the existence of this component, the only reason to exist is to just, justify a piece of template, which is not good enough reason. So you have a bubble up and bubble down, and then, you pretty much create a lot of mess. Trust me, I've been there, done that, got a t-shirt. So this is not gonna scale. So what you need to do instead? Well, actually, for the current situation, I'm probably going to show you some more situations that the business can come with that are a little bit more, difficult. But the very, very basic solution for this problem is to use content projection. So imagine that we get let's say a business comes in and says, hey, I want to create a middle component, right? So now I want to have something in between. I mean, this child presentation, the 2 buttons, that's awesome, that's looking good. and it's part of like a bigger container with maybe H2 or whatever it is. But now I want to put it inside the cart component. That's one more component you need to put it in. So guess what's going to happen in this component if I want to put it in between these two? Yeah, you guessed that right. I'm going to have those inputs and outputs as well. So that's another case when it will not scale simply. So a content projection in both of those cases is the solution for the problem. So I talk a lot about the content projection, and it's pretty basic concept, but yet not many people are actually using it. And it seems to be very natural. Watch my previous videos so you will see what I mean. So imagine this. So let's say I have that piece of the template. Let me build it for now. So I'm gonna just like play around with it. So all I wanna do is to have a div or maybe a section. And then in that section, I want to have H2, and I say super awesome container. And the piece of this container will have those two buttons. Right, so yeah, now I justify the existence of that component. But what I can do instead is to say, you know, the only reason for this component to exist is to create that piece of template. And then this piece of code, what I can do, actually, I'm going to keep them both so you can see it's still working. What I can do in my smart component, inside of here, I can put this one. Yeah. And then obviously here you would need to say the B1, right? Just like the one above. Because I don't have that variable. All right, let's see if this works. That might look confusing to you actually, but let's have a look. So yeah, sure enough. So I have the, okay, maybe let's separate them a little bit. So in here, let's just do an HR divider. Yeah, so now I can see. So you see, I click this one, I get the B2. I click this one, I also get the B2. So it's pretty much the same. The only difference is when I come into my smart component, that I can reason about a lot better than this one. Because think also about like your time, right? You're a developer. You're supposed to be lazy. I'm joking. But, well, lazy developers are good actually. And then you can come in and come here and say, you know, how do you know what does the parent presentation component has? You don't. You have to open it, right? You have to click it. Why do you click it? I just have a look at this one. It's so nice and clean. You can already know what it contains because it's part of its own presentational component, content projection. So check it out. You don't need that at all. You can just build this. And now you can say, okay, yeah, we still bubble the events. Are you sure? I don't think we do, because what we can is to remove these two. Well, let's keep the selected for now because I'm gonna keep it for the dessert. But then I can remove this one, and obviously I can have a lot more interesting logic in here. And then that's it. I mean, I didn't bubble anything. Check it out. Obviously, I will not handle this one. Yeah, and this selected doesn't make much sense actually. It's we're gonna touch it later. So check it out. It still should work. So now I have only one. Works like a charm. And you see, I can show you also if I change it to B2, which is the ID of the second one. Sorry, not this one, but if I change this one to B2, now it should be inverted. Yeah, sure enough. This one is not clickable, and B1 here comes as well. So let's see more what we can to offer. Let's say a business comes in and says, this selected B1, right? So this is a nice and proper way to do it. Ideally, it would be actually on each of those buttons. But let's say they say, no, I don't want to control the selected on each, chart presentational component. I want to control it in the parent. I just want to have it in one place and add it. I don't know, for whatever business reasons it makes sense. I maybe want to have one consistent thing. And then you can say, okay, but so I'm gonna have this selected. Well, how do I get it pushed? So obviously you can have a view child the decorator, and then sorry, actually, since it's in a content projection right here, let me remove this. It's actually content child. So you could have a content child and find it through this, and that's most of the time pretty good thing to do. That's one way to avoid this event bubbling, right? Right now you can't really even bubble it down because it's part of the content projection, but I could argue that this is very similar to just bubbling it down, because now you're in control of what's gonna happen, which is most of the time okay. But then what others way? I often ask this on the interview questions, right? When people go and want to work for us, what are the other ways instead of the inputs and outputs to communicate between? And obviously content child is one of them, and the view child, same but different. But then people come in with the idea service, right? I can have a service. So, but then you can think about it. Okay, so you would have a service like a selection service, right? And it would have some selection service, whatever. Cool. So now I could set it, the selected in the service, inject that service also in my child component, and then work with it. And most of the time this is pretty good and pretty awesome way of doing this, but not always is suitable. There are some better ways to do it, and I'm really surprised people don't know it. So bear with me, because I'm gonna give you a pretty good hint here. So sure, you can use the service, but you have to be also very careful not to make that service too smart, because then I would argue with you, you're creating a hybrid component. You create a component that has an input, which is a presentational, but also has a service. So make sure those services do not communicate with the application and infrastructure layers to actually call things outside or use some local storage or whatever. You shouldn't really do that, because that's another layer. So we are here in the presentational layer. So what can you do? Well, if you keep that service sound and clean and use only some behavior subject just to keep the selection, that's fine. That's one way of doing this. But sometimes it feels like a shooting to the flies with a shotgun. I mean, do you really need to do it? There are easier ways to actually achieve this. So one way of communicate, like what I would strongly recommend you is use content children to communicate, child or children to communicate down in the component tree. And then if you want, what about if a child needs to send some information to presentational component, right? What if that happens? Actually, here comes a very neat trick. What you can do is you can have a constructor, you can have a parent here, and you just put a name of the component up in the tree. In this case, it's a parent. Oh, sorry, I'm in the parent. My mistake. Apologies for that. I can be here and say parent, and I say parent presentational component. That's pretty neat. And now you can get the reference of it. So for example, whenever you click the button or whatever happens, instead of outputting this, you could also let your parent know and change the selected to be this component. Or you can use some symbols, or you can use some sort of unique IDs, or whatever happens to be. Actually, what you can do is to just set the ID of it. So that's pretty interesting, isn't it? Let's have a look. So you can set that parent here. So what you need to do is go the selected. You can go here just for the argument's sake. You can have a setter, because that's a neat trick that whenever that value changes, then you can react to it. So an easy way to go about it is to just make sure things get selected. So let me show it to you in the actual code. So I open the console here. And then when I click this one, of course the alert appears, and here we go. I get it actually. So this comes from within the component up to the parent one. So now we have a pretty nice communication back and forth. So the easy way to go about it is to pretty much finish it coding. So let me get back to this because I just wanted to show you it's possible. And then you can go to the child, to the child. And then here you see you had this input for selected, and of course, I mean, you may have this one, or you may decide no, the parent is the only source of truth, so you can delete it. And then you can see parent.selected. If parent.selected is this ID, look what's gonna happen. I come here, so because the parent had selected B1, now when I click this button, sure, I get the pop-up. That's disabled, and now this is enabled because parent now controls what should be selected, even without any content child. Isn't that great? So you see, there are so many ways to actually go about it, and I really encourage you to study Angular CDK and Angular material or components, it's called these days, because that's gonna show you all those tricks, you know, and like, don't shoot the flies with the shotgun, right? Just be laser focused and get exactly what you need to do, and don't bubble those events apps. This is much more scalable. Let me show it to you. Let's say the case when the business comes in and says, "Oh, I would like to put this in one more middle component," right? So we're gonna have this one here, which is gonna add a new section thing. Let's just say so. And then in here, in the template, I'm gonna have an ng content again, and then I'm gonna just put a let's say header, which is the introductory content with h3 this time because it's nested, and say even deeper nesting. Check it out. I mean, I've added the component in between those without adding any inputs. Let's just have a look. Look, even deeper nesting. Things work as expected. This is reusable. All right. I hope you learned something today. I'm always up to, help people to make the Angular great. So let's just, leave me some comments. Do whatever you want to do. Leave a like if you like. And then, I'll see you next time. Have a nice day.